Okay, this is the second part of our Python tutorial, right? So go to jupyter.org, jupyter.org, okay, jupyter.org. And next week, actually, what we're going to do is I will ask IT to configure these computers so that we could run Python locally on the machine. So right now, well, not right now, go to try it in the browser. Click try it in the browser button, okay? So you can see in the URL, it says, right now we're looking at try.jupyter.org, right? So whatever we do actually runs on the server machine somewhere, right? In a kingdom far, far away, okay? But what I want to be able to do is run it on your machines locally, again, from the browser, right? Download the data files, save them on the desktop, and analyze the data files which you saved on your machine, right? Right now I cannot do that because I cannot point the browser to read the data from my computer, right? It's not going to happen. But if I run the Python on my machine, not on the server, that's possible, okay? So go to New, there's a button New, right? And pick Python 3. Python 3, and it opens up the code editor in the browser, right? Question? No? You got it? Okay. Yep. All right. So I'm going to make it bigger, okay? Magnifier. All right. So, Luis, go ahead and start the jupyter.org. All right. And in jupyter.org, click the button, try it in your browser. Okay? So, in the previous class, we learned actually a lot of things, quite honestly. We learned about the variables and how you assign values to the variables, right? We learned about simple function print, right? And also function input that takes input from the user, right? You type it on the keyboard and records that into the internal variable. And then we did if statement, if else, checking the condition, very basic, very important structure in any programming language. Okay, in Java, in C++, and Python, critical. Okay, if else. And also we learned how you can repeat the same block of code several times in a row, right? That's called a for loop. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at another thing. Another way to loop through things, right? So let me kind of quickly remind you what for loop looks like. For loop is useful when you know how many times you're going to repeat this stuff, okay? So for example, let's say I want to print out numbers from 1 to 10, okay? Very simple. So I'm going to say for I in range from 1 to 11. Remember we discussed that in the previous class. The reason I don't say 1 to 10 is because weirdly enough, this function in Python excludes the last one, right? So if I say 1 to 10, really it's going to go from 1 to 9, right? So if I say 1 to 11, it's going to go from 1 to 10, right? And don't forget the column, okay, after this statement.
Are we,
I'm just reminding you what.
Are we not going to use the...
What?
The one we worked on last time?
No. Yeah, we're going to do something else, okay? I in range from 1 to 11, I'm just going to say print this, so print this is number and then add I, okay? So as I takes the values 1, 2, 3, etc., it will say this is number 1, this is number 2, and it's going to do it 10 times, right? Because that's what my for cycle does, right? It says fixed number of rounds, fixed number of iterations, do this thing repeatedly, okay? And if I run it, there you go. This is number 1, this is number 2, this is number 10, okay? So that's the for cycle. Another pretty popular cycle in programming languages is something called while, okay? While is typically done when I don't know how many times I want to repeat the same line of code. And it depends on certain condition, okay? So, for example, let's say I'm gonna take user input, okay? Number. I'm gonna call this thing number, okay? From user, I want to get a number. Okay? So I'm gonna say this is input from the user, and I'm going to ask the user how many bottles of beer would you like to drink? Okay? And the user will enter the number. Let's show. Okay? And after that, I'm going to repeat, After that, I'm going to repeat the cycle while, okay? Before while, actually, let's go ahead and do this thing, okay? I'm gonna say I, or iterator, okay, equals 1. Okay?
What does that mean?
Iterator, I misspelled it, right? Iterator, a lot of times what I need, if I want to go through the cycle, iterator is like a dummy variable, which keeps track of how many times I did the block of code in a cycle, okay? So it's just internal way to keep count, okay? Iterator, right now I'm on the iteration number 1, okay? While iterator is less than or equal to this number that the user entered, okay? I'm going to repeat the same line of code.
What does iterator mean?
Oh, you can call it I if you want to, okay? Let's call it I, if that...
Oh, that's what I stands for?
Yeah. No, I is just... It's a general practice in coding. If I want certain counter in my program, like iterator, something that keeps count. Typically, programmers call it I, J, K, etc., some, faceless names, right? So instead of that, every once in a while, iterator. Iterator is just a fancy way to say it. So let's call it I if you want, okay? I will keep keep track of how many times I did the iteration, okay? So while I is less than a number, and number, I don't know the number yet, right? The user need to enter the number, agree? And remember, also, number is a string, right? Remember that? In the previous class, everything that the user enters from the keyboard is treated as a string, right? So if I want that to be treated as an integer, I'm gonna have to say int, right? Integer, which corresponds to this user's input, right? Whatever user entered, I'm going to take integer from that, okay, and compare that to I. So as long as my iterator is still less than this number that the user entered, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to print out, okay, print this thing. How does that go? 99 bottles of beer on the wall, right? Okay, so I'm going to say 99 minus I plus 1, because in the first one is going to be 99, right? Bottles of beer on the wall. So if I subtract my iterator, I'm going to have to add 1 to get to 99, right? 99, and without quotes, by the way, without quotations, okay, that's a number. 99 minus I plus 1, comma, bottles of beer on the wall, comma, (99 minus I plus 1, comma, bottles of beer. Okay? And then, if I want to start a new string, that's actually something else, okay? So if I keep typing, well, I can probably start the next line, right? But if I want to start a next line inside my string, here's what's done. In a lot of programming languages, that includes Python, okay? I'm going to say \n. \n is a special command in a lot of programming languages, including C++. It's probably the same in Java, right? David, new line is /n in Java? Yeah, \n. So Python, same thing. So every time when it sees \n, and that, by the way, is within my quotations, it's going to start a new line, okay? And you will see that in action, okay? So, bottles of beer. How does it go after that? Take one down, right? Never heard about that before?
Take one down, pass it around, something, bottles of beer on the wall.
Yes, that's right. Take one down. Take one down and pass it around. And then one less bottle of beer on the wall, right? So then we're going to have to say 99 minus I bottles of beer on the wall. Okay? So that's what I'm going to try.
Wait, will you go back, please?
Yeah. So it will say 99 minus I plus 1 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 minus I plus 1 bottles of beer. So it's going to start with 99, right? Because I equals to 1. And then take one down, pass it around, and we're going to reduce that number by 1. 99 minus I bottles of beer, right? And it's going to keep repeating that how many times?
Why is it /
/n. We just discussed that, right? What does that mean? Anybody? /n. Abby? What does that mean, /n?
New line?
A new line, right? It's gonna, I can continue the line just like I did, right? But it will start a new line after that, okay? Take one down, pass it around. 99 minus I bottles of beer on the wall, okay?
Wait.
Yeah.
I need to copy that.
Hmm? All right. So you got this part?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now, after that, what I want to do is every time when I executed this line of code, I want to increase the counter by how many? Like, I executed the code once. My counter, which is I, right, goes up by what? By 1, right? Every time when I execute this line of code, my counter is increased by 1. So my next line is going to be I, and this is how you do it. Standard thing in all programming languages. You're going to say I equals I plus 1. That means that whatever used to be I is getting incremented by 1. Okay? So if my I was equal to 1, then when it hits this point, it becomes I plus 1, which is 2. Next time, it becomes I plus 1, which is 3, right? And how many times I'm going to do that? Until this condition is satisfied, right? I is less than or equal to whatever number the user entered, okay? And since I don't know the number that the user entered, I'm going to use this code, okay? So let's see. I don't know, quite honestly, if it's going to work or not, but let's try, okay? So I hit run. So let's do something simple. 3, right? So the code runs. Abby?
Mine is not running.
Okay, hold on.
Like, I hit run, and it just gives me a new, like, blank line.
Okay, well, take a look at that, right? So 3. Look at that. Mine executed 3 times, right? How many bottles of beer would you like to drink? 3. 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer, take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer on the wall. Next one says 98 bottles of beer, take one down, pass it around, 97, right? And then it says 97, take one down, pass it around, 96. And then it quits, right? Why did it quit? Because it hit this condition, right? So after executing 3 times, so with I equals to 1, I equals 2, and I equals to 3, this condition was satisfied, right? I is less than or equal to number 3. But when I was 3, at the end, I incremented I by 1 and it became 4, right? And then it starts the loop with checking this condition. It says, is 4 less than 3? No. So it quits out of the loop. Make sense? So there are 2 types of loops in any programming language. For, which we saw right here, right? It's when typically it's done when I know how many times I want to iterate through my blocks of code, okay? And if I don't know, if I have no idea, like in this case, it all depends on the number that the user entered, right? I don't know. Well, technically speaking, just between us chickens, right? I could have done it with a for loop as well. Because once the number of beers is entered by the user, it becomes a number, and I know how many times I want to iterate, right? So I could have done it with a for loop. But I just chose to do it with a while loop, just to illustrate. Still nothing? Okay, let's see.
Okay, now everything right. I just hit run and it just gives me new stuff. And I tried copying and pasting it onto another one and it did the same thing. I did it wrong.
Okay, let's take a look at that again, okay? Don't close it out, alright? Alright. Because it looks like everything is right. Yeah. Another important thing, okay? So, how is everybody feeling before we proceed? Yay? Well,
That was working now. But I put it into a new tab.
so alt tab didn't work. So the
I just put it like I made a new tab of
uh-huh.
my phone.
Run it in the browser, and now it works.
And now it works.
Yeah, cool. So, any questions about while loop? How it works?
What do you call this a while loop?
While loop. There are two loops. For loop, right? This one is a for loop, and this is while loop. And the main difference, again, in the for loop, you typically know how many times you want to iterate, how many times you want to repeat the code. And while loop, in while loop, you don't know how many times you want to repeat the code.
What do you mean?
Well, here, right? The number of times when how many times the code was run, it was not 10 or 20, right? It all depends on what the user enters, right? So we're saying, okay, until you run out of iterations that the user entered, let's keep repeating this thing, right? So user enters 3, you do it 3 times. What about if user enters 10? Let me rerun it. It should repeat itself 10 times, right? So, okay. So if I enter number 10, bam, it repeats itself 10 times, right? So it's not a fixed number of iterations, okay? All right, now, yay? Good.
I did it 98 times.
You did 98 times? So it's really long list, right?
Yeah, when all the way down to the one.
Yep. All right, now let's take a look at another very powerful concept of Python, and we're getting actually close to using the libraries, okay? The idea is you don't want to reinvent the wheel, right? If something already was built, if the code was written already that does something, you don't want to do it yourself again and again and again. You want to reuse the code, okay? For example, let's say in my program, and it's just made up example, okay? In my program, I have the code which takes 2 numbers and finds the what's it called? Biggest common factor, right? What's the biggest common factor? Largest common factor. What is it? I guess from calculus, or maybe even algebra. What's the biggest common factor? Anybody? Like there are 2 numbers, 24 and 32.
Oh, 6.
Now 32 you can divide by 6.
8.
8, right? 8 is the biggest common factor, right? Why? Because it's the largest number which divides both 24 and 32, right? So, by definition, the biggest common factor is the integer number which divides both numbers, and there is nothing larger than that, right? Okay, so here is what I can do. Okay, I can write a function which finds the biggest common factor between 2 numbers which I enter. Okay, and every time when I need to find the biggest common factor for the 2 numbers, all I do is call this function. Okay, so I don't want to copy paste the code multiple times again and again and again. So let's go ahead and do that. how do you, so what we're going to do is create right now something that's called user-defined functions, okay? Some functions are already pre-built. So for example, print function, right? If I want to say print 1, there's your 1, okay? Print is a pre-built function which already exists inside Python, okay? So I'm going to write my own function right now. So let me go ahead and click plus right there, okay? Every time when I write a function, I must start with the keyword def. Can you guess what it stands for?
Define.
Define, okay? Define function, and after that I have to say function name, how the function is going to be called. Let me call this function compute. I'm going to give it really long name, okay? It's all right to give it long name. Compute, yeah, compute, is that correct?
Yeah.
Compute largest common factor. So that's factor. That's going to be the name of my function, okay? And the function should be able to accept from the user two numbers, right? Every time when you say largest common factor, you need several numbers, right? So therefore, I should send to the function number x and number y. So these are variables that I feed into the function, okay? And inside of the function, it will compute what's the largest common factor
XY.
between two numbers, x and y. So x is a number and y is a number, okay? And it will spit me out the answer, okay? So it's like a black box essentially, if you think about that, okay? Functions are like black boxes, okay? You send something in, you get the response out. What happens inside, don't know, don't care. As long as the function works correctly, that's all I care, right? It's like driving a car, essentially, right? Every time when you sit in the car and turn the key, it starts making this vroom noise, right? You know what's happening inside? You have a very general idea, right? There's a fuel mixed with oxygen and stuff happens, but you have no idea about details, right? As long as it operates, that's all you care, right? Same thing with functions, okay? So we're going to write the function. Now, since what happens after that is the body of my function, what symbol should I place? Can you guess? Just like in the for loop, in the while loop, in the if condition, a colon, right? So when I hit enter, remember I told you, Python uses the levels of indentation, right? So if the lines are on the same level of indentation, it tells the Python that they all belong to the same piece of code, okay? So whatever happens inside my function, I'm going to type on the same level of indentation, okay? So first of all, let's do this. I'm going to find out which of these two numbers is smallest, right? So bear with me. I'm going to say smallest is, no, let's do it like that. If, right, I don't know which number is smallest, right? User entered 4 and he entered 7. 4 is less than 7. Or he can enter 7 and 4, right? Other way around. So one of them is smallest. So I'm going to say if x is greater than y, then what? Smallest is what? Y, right? Between the two, smallest is y, because x is greater. Else, smallest is what? X, correct?
Yeah.
First I find which number is smallest. Okay. Then, now that I found it, I'm going to do this trick. I'm going to write a for loop, which iterates through all integers, starting from 1 up until and including the smallest number, right? And it tries to divide x by that number and y by that number. And if they're both divisible, it becomes my smallest largest common factor, right? LCF, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say for loop, right? For I in the range from 1 until smallest plus 1. Remember why plus 1? Because if I say smallest, right, it will go to smallest minus 1, right? It's including it's excluding the last one, right? So if I say smallest plus 1, it's going to go from 1 to the smallest number, right? Agree? Right? Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, if x is divisible by I and y is divisible by I. How do I say divisible? We actually did that in the previous class. How do I check if the number x is divisible by the number I without any residual?
The percentage sign.
Percentage sign, exactly, modulus, right? So, therefore, I'm going to say if x percent I, okay, if it's equal to 0, and then it's not just equal, it's equal, equal. Remember, we had discussion. Why is it equal, equal? Because if I just say equal, it's an assignment operator. It says record that value into this variable, right? Equal, equal does not do anything except it compares. Is that value same as this value? True or false? That's the outcome, right? So if x is divisible by I without any residual, so that means that the modulus is 0, right? Without any remainder, right? And also, I believe we didn't see and yet. And looks like this, okay? And after that, y percentage I also equals 0, okay? That means that x is divisible by I number and y is divisible by I number as well, without any remainder. These two conditions are satisfied simultaneously, okay? If one of them is true and another is false, the whole thing is false. Both must be true, okay? Then what happens? That means that I is the largest common factor, right? So I'm going to say largest common factor is equal to this number I. Okay? And that's it. After that, I'm going to say I equals I plus 1. Okay? Increment I by 1. Alright? So that's what's going to happen inside of my loop. I'm going to take I starting from 1, right? I'm going to say, is x divisible by 1? Yes. Is y divisible by 1? Yes. Then assign largest common factor, value of I 1. Then increment I by 1, it becomes 2. Is x divisible by 2? Yes. Is y divisible by 2? Yes. Therefore, assign largest common factor value of 2. Next one is 3. Is x divisible by 3? No. Skip that one. Increment I by 1. Right? So that's how it's going to go. And at the end, when it iterates through all these steps, the largest number which is both, which divides both x and y, is the one that I should return, right? So therefore, at the end, I'm going to give it a couple of lines. Right here, I'm going to say return. This function return the value of largest common factor. Okay? That's my function. That's it. Okay? So after it runs through all these lines of code, okay, and completes the for loop, hopefully in this variable largest common factor, I'm going to have the value which divides without any remainder both numbers x and y. Okay, so that's my function. Now let's go ahead and use it, right? So now I'm going to say, how about that? I'm going to trial run it. All right. So print, and here I'm going to say largest. No, it's case sensitive, by the way. One more thing that I didn't mention before: Python is case sensitive. What does that mean? That means that the variable capital X and little x are actually different variables, right? So my function is called compute with capital C, compute largest with capital L, largest common with capital C factor. Okay, compute largest common factor between numbers, let's say 10 and 8. Now, before we even run that, what's the largest common factor between 10 and 8?
4.
4. 2, right? So what if we run it? There you go, it's 2, right? 10 divided by 4. Louis, come on. You're accountant. KPMG will not tolerate this thing.
Yeah, ours is now running. Mine did not run.
What?
Syntax error.
Okay, syntax error.
Range 1. Invalid. I feel like you definitely have the same right there. But I literally have the same thing. No, but yours has a space.
I don't, yeah. In the range. Oh my god, English major.
What?
In the range.
So long. Maybe it's my computer.
Yeah. Not your computer, the thing around it.
I got it.
Eight.
What the heck? What did you change?
Run. No.
Honestly, I really
It ain't work.
Oh no, I forgot. Semicolon.
Yeah. Okay, so now
Wait, mine's not working.
yours not working.
Because I just got 8.
I got
That's the
8
largest
too.
common
That's what I
factor.
got. Really?
Yeah.
Mine didn't work.
I got it. Let's see. Largest common factor. Do you see that?
Let's see.
Wait, I have a question. Okay?
How come?
Read. Well, don't worry about that.
Wait,
Yeah.
mine solved it to 8.
Yeah. Yours says 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, 8.
What was I missing? What did I do wrong?
For I in the range. You got the same thing? No?
I got 8.
You got 8?
Yeah.
Smallest is. Alright, let's take a look at that after class, okay? We'll figure it out. I just can see it on the spot, okay? So let's go ahead and don't close the browser, okay? We'll figure it out. So now instead of printing, how about I take numbers from the user, okay? So I'm gonna say this. Number 1. Whoops. Number 1 equals input from the user, and I'm going to ask them, please, no, without please, right? It's going to be a command. Enter number 1. Enter first number.
So we're modifying it?
Yeah, so we're going to modify the code a little bit. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2. I'm going to say input from the user, enter number 2. Enter second number. Enter second number. And after that, what I'm going to say is print print this phrase, the largest common factor of numbers. I'm going to say number 1 and number 2 is, and after that I'm going to ask the program to find and print compute the result of compute largest common factor between two numbers x and y, right? But remember, same thing, right? I need to convert them into the integers first, because when they enter that, it becomes a string, right? So really I have to say integer of number 1, and also second one is going to be integer of number 2. Okay? So that's the line that I'm going to try to run. Whoops. Hold on. Yeah, right there. Okay? So I'm asking user, please enter the first number, and I record that into the variable number 1, right? And I'm asking the user to enter the second number, and I'm recording that into the variable number 2. And then I'm going to say, largest common factor between what you entered first and what you entered second is, and after that I'm going to say, call the function which I just created, right? Function compute largest common factor. Okay? And I'm going to send it two variables, x and y, just like what it requires, right? Remember when we created the function, we said it takes x and it takes y, right? But I know that both x and y have to be integers, right? That's why I'm calling the function int on each of them. So int from number 1 and int for number 2. And both of these are sent into the function compute largest common factor, which I just created. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's essentially what I'm doing right now, right?
You could run.
Yeah. So are you with me? Travis?
Yeah.
Yay? Melanie? Yay? Let's see if it works, because it does? Oh, wow.
That'll work.
So let's see. What's the largest common factor between number 30 and 45? If you would have to guess. 15. And right there it finds 15 for me, okay? Yay?
No,
No? It's not running? Okay.
not like it goes.
Yours says 30?
Yeah.
Okay, let's find out what it is. All right. Is that enough?
This is error.
Is that enough material for today, or do you want to?
30, 40.
Okay, so let's stop the lecture right now. Okay.
Can you fix mine?
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna stop recording, and then I'm gonna fix our code. Okay.
Okay.
So recording stops right here.